The Queen Mother, the mother who held Margaret back, in Westminster Abbey, on a June morning in 1953, a hand reaches out. Princess Margaret leans forward. She brushes a thread of lint from a man's uniform. The gesture lasts 2 seconds. It cannot be taken back. The foreign press has been watching for weeks. Now they have what they need. A royal romance. A forbidden love. A scandal in plain sight. But that is only the ending. The real story began 20 years earlier. It began in a garden in Windsor Great Park. A mother was quietly building a world for her daughters. A world so warm, so complete, and so carefully made, that leaving it would become the defining challenge of one woman's life. The world she built. The house was called Royal Lodge. It sat quietly inside Windsor Great Park. King George V offered it to the Yorks in 1931. They made it entirely their own. The floors were linoleum, not marble. The budget was modest. But the atmosphere was everything. Fires burned in every room through the winter months. Music drifted through the corridors in the evenings. The garden was a shared project, rhododendrons and magnolias planted by hand. Grassy walks between the trees, quiet statues half hidden in the shade. This was the world of us four. A king, a queen, and their 2 daughters, a self-contained universe, shaped by warmth and held together by will. The formality of palace life fell away entirely. The Duchess of York had a genius for atmosphere. She understood what a room needed, the right quality of quiet. Margaret, the younger daughter, was the beating heart of this private world. She was vivacious, quick-witted, and intensely gifted. She performed at the family's private Christmas theatricals. She made her mother laugh and lit every room she entered. She was beloved. She knew it. Her education followed the pattern her mother had set. It favored charm over academic rigor, warmth over formal ambition. Inside, things were beautiful. Outside, things were unknown, and the unknown was not a subject for discussion. She was giving her daughters what she herself had always trusted. The Queen Mother was not designing a trap. She was designing a home. Safety is not a reward. It is simply the air a well-loved child breathes. But every design carries a consequence its architect cannot foresee. A girl raised inside unconditional warmth has no practice for ordinary loss. She has never needed to build her own fire. She has never had to learn the cold. Margaret grew up entirely within her mother's golden care. The world beyond Royal Lodge was abstract, distant, almost theoretical. She had never encountered a door she could not open by simply being who she was. That was the gift. And quietly, invisibly, that was also the cost. When the king died, the first shadow entered without announcement. The king fell ill. The man who had been the axis around which his four turned was now confined to bed. The warmth of Royal Lodge grew hushed and careful. Margaret came of age in this contracting world. The enchantment was still there, but it was quieter now, more fragile. In February 1952, King George VI died at Sandringham. He had been the center of the family's world. Now us four was us three. The Queen Mother's grief was complete and total. She retreated into it. The home she had built to keep sadness at bay now held sadness at its center. Margaret had no practice for living inside a grief this size. She had always been protected from it. The protection was gone. She was cold, in a way she had never been taught to warm herself. A cage of shared grief. The family moved to Clarence House. The Queen Mother found it difficult. It was unfamiliar, unhomely, and nothing like the world she had spent 20 years perfecting. Her rooms were on one floor, Margaret's were on another. A divided home for a divided grief. Into this quiet came Peter Townsend. He had been the late king's equerry, calm, capable, and steady. He became the only fixed point in a world that had lost all its fixed points. He understood loss in a way the courtiers in their suits did not. His steadiness was the first solid ground in a dissolving world. The Queen Mother saw what was forming. She was present for it. The three of them lunched together, dined together, sat in the evenings. She watched what was growing between them. She said nothing. A word from her at any point might have changed the direction. To speak was to acknowledge a truth she was not prepared to name. Her silence was not a strategy, it was the paralysis of a woman caught. A love for her daughter so complete it had no room left for a hard conversation. In the spring of 1953, Townsend made his feelings known. Margaret accepted. It was their secret, a fragile hope. Held quietly in the rooms, in the long silence after the king's death. A secret cannot survive a coronation. The architecture of expectation. June 1953. The coronation was over. The abbey was full of colour and movement. Margaret found Townsend in the crowd. As they spoke, she reached out. With her white-gloved hand, she brushed a thread of lint from his uniform. The foreign press saw it. They had what they need. The story broke across Europe within days. In Britain, the newspapers stayed quiet. The silence could not hold. The palace moved with cold efficiency. Townsend was offered a posting abroad. He chose Brussels. He chose to remain near his young sons. He was ordered to leave on the 8th of July. Margaret was still abroad on a royal tour. She would not return until the 10th. They were not permitted to say goodbye. The Queen Mother did not oppose this arrangement. She did not speak to the Prime Minister. She did not intervene. Her inaction was its own kind of message. And so began the long wait. Margaret would turn 25 in August 1955. The door was not locked. It was simply very, very narrow. For 2 years, the matter was communicated without words. There were no direct conversations, no ultimatums. Instead, there was the architecture of expectation. The shape of what this family understood duty to mean. Not as an argument, as the weather. Margaret's life during those years was not empty. She attended parties, she danced, she smiled for the cameras. She did everything a princess was required to do, beautifully. And she waited, quietly, without knowing what she was waiting for. The Queen Mother was present throughout those years. She was warm, attentive, and loving in every way she had always been. She offered no direction. She raised no objection. She simply continued to love, in the only way she had ever known. Margaret was left to interpret all of that silence on her own. In October 1955, Princess Margaret issued a statement. She would not be marrying Peter Townsend. She had weighed her duty against her own wishes. She had chosen the institution before herself. What was said in the private rooms that followed, we do not know. What we know is that the rooms were very quiet. And they stayed quiet for a long time after. What she was left with. Margaret was left with a grief she could not name publicly. The world had watched. The world moved on. She was not permitted that ease. In the years that followed, she accepted the proposal of Anthony Armstrong Jones. He was a photographer, modern, creative, and wholly unlike Royal Lodge. He came from a different world entirely. Perhaps that was part of the point. It was not the same love. But it was a life. A bright, complicated, sometimes unhappy life. Built from what remained when the other door finally closed. The Queen Mother lived to be 101 years old. She and Margaret remained close until the end. They shared the private language of the world they had built together. The warmth, the dry humor, the loyalty that required no explanation. But there is a question that sits between them, unanswered. Whether the Queen Mother understood what her silence had cost. Whether she found words for it when they were alone. Whether words would have changed anything at all. We cannot answer that. What we can say is this. The love was real. It was not a performance. It was the most complete and devoted love a mother could offer. It filled every room of that world. But love can also be a cage made of gold. Margaret remained within that golden world forever. A world built on silence and held together by will.